Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing another tutorial for you today. Thank you brain for that. I did not need that right now. Anyways, I'm going to be showing you how to shade digital arts. I'm specifically going to be showing 4 different ways because I don't use just one myself and it doesn't seem really justified to just show you one. So I'm going to be kind of rushing through these, but I just wanted to give you a gist of how to do these 4 main types. Now, of course, I have 4 different headshots here, each one of the same thing, just kind of copy and paste it over, just to kind of show you how the different styles will get you different results. So let's jump in. Now, the first one I'm going to be showing you is called a cell style, or cell shaded. Generally, this is used for well, you see it used for manga and comics and things like that, so I find myself using this a lot when I want to try for something a little bit more stylized. And here's a little bit of where knowing your program helps you. You can't do a proper cell style shaded in Paint Tool Sai, which is my main program. Now, how it's supposed to be done, now this is the supposed to be, how it is supposed to be done is, let me actually change this thing to black. You're supposed to take a lasso selection tool, which should be in every single digital program, and use select areas, and you kind of just, oh, I'm hitting the wrong button, and you just kind of keep on going through, selecting the areas that you want to have shaded. So let's just assume the shadow underneath the hair. And I'm actually going to drop this. Oh no, I can't actually do that. Well, that's it. And then a little bit of the hair itself. Just kind of, I'm just throwing this in. This is no thought but to it. Please don't think that this is supposed to look serious right now. So, just kind of shading this one area. So you're supposed to select everything you want to have shaded. Then you actually, on a different layer than what everything is on, you color the entire thing black. And then you just kind of change the opacity until it's something you like. And normally that's supposed to look really good. Except Sai has this thing of taking the selection tool a little bit too literally, and it just becomes this pixelated mess. So know your programs, because you can't shade, and you can't do that style of shading in this program. Now, you can get the same look, you just can't do it the same way through Sai. And it's a lot more labor intensive, but it's worthwhile. I mean, the style looks good. So what you do otherwise is, now for this, I'm actually gonna have to merge all of these colors together just so I can do this easier. Alright, so that's all the colors. So black and white color. Now, one thing that I've seen people do is they actually make another layer directly above the coloring, or you can add the line art in if you want, but you don't have to. Another way you can do this is actually just to select out all the areas, but this is a lot of clicking and a lot of fiddling with it, and like I can't select that because that's open, and there's a lot of other steps involved in that one, and I just do this method myself. And you just kind of make a clipping group, which means that only things that are drawn underneath it will show up on this one. So I can't go outside the boundaries that were set by the layer underneath, which is all the coloring. So now, since Sai has this great line work kind of program, line workability, yes, you can get the cell style look just by, well, filling in the areas. Being careful not to leave little bumps, like this right here is not very good, like right there. So, and you just kind of go through and put it down where you think the shading will be. And when you're all done, you kind of just set the opacity to indicate the light level. So, like this is probably rather low light, and very soft, very mild. That's perfectly fine. And this is probably one of the most labor intensive I'm going to be showing you. But it's exactly as you're saying here. You just go through, imagine where the shadow will fall, and of course, I'm going to say it right now, I'm assuming all of the light is coming down from the top, coming down from right above, just because that makes this a whole lot easier to show you the difference between all of them if they're all the same style, or the same direction of lighting. Now, the neat thing with cell shaded is it lets you get these points that look really, really good, actually. Again, I'm going to say this a lot. I use this shading a lot because I just love the way it looks. So, for hair, you can kind of go in with these little zigzags and these kind of pointed areas, and you can give a shape to this huge flat area that always shows up with hair drawings and the drawings of hair on character and hair this and that. I'm talking a lot about hair, but I mean hair is really, really fun to shade once you kind of get used to it. So you can get these points that kind of assume the shape of the hair that's supposed to be there. And then for like the face, you kind of just block in the whole areas that are supposed to be shaded. So like the underside of the jaw going up here. Well, fill all this in. Maybe kind of tough it up a little bit just because this is supposed to be a furred character. And you can kind of get those effects. You round it out. Anything that's below, in this case, should be shaded. Like this whole thing back here will be in the dark, so this whole thing, now this is of course the hair in the back, it's not a thing. These aren't things. Now I spin this a lot more when I'm shading just because it's easier to get kind of the angles I need. I'm going to apologize if you can hear those noises. I'm recording this a little bit earlier than I'm used to. Then you can shade right underneath the jawline because the face extends out, so naturally it stops some light from going underneath it. The one real flaw with cell shading, and I'm going to continue shading while I'm talking, that way I don't have to time lapse as much. The one real flaw with shading like this is it's a little bit more difficult to get different levels of shading. And what I mean by that is, right now I'm doing one tone of black across the entire thing. And that makes sense. I mean, it's shadow. It's darker. But what if there's something that's even darker than this? Like it's really, really far behind, or there's like 2 or 3 shadows overlapping in one area. Well, in order to do that, you make another layer, and you set the opacity higher, and you start filling that area in. And hey, look, it's darker. The issue is that if it overlaps, it actually gets tremendously darker. And you have to pay really, really close attention to not letting anything overlap. See, look, right there, it overlapped a little bit, and that sticks out pretty well. I mean, when you're zoomed out, you probably wouldn't notice it, but if that keeps on happening, it just makes the shading look kind of sloppy. So you have to be very, very careful if you're going to try and do multiple levels of shading, or you just don't do them at all. Which, I mean, that's kind of the reason why this is used for a lot of different, why this style is used in a lot of different cases, because it kind of is an excuse to not do multiple layers of shading, I'll be honest. I use this way too much. So yeah, kind of know what style you're going to be using and know what context everything is going to be in. Because if you're supposed to be in this kind of super well lit area and it's supposed to be really pretty looking and gradient shaded and all this stuff, I mean, this style is not going to do you very well. But I don't know, if you're kind of just doing something for yourself, I see no reason why you draw it how you wish. I'm not going to shade the back of the hair too awful much here. Oh, come on, undo that. That looked terrible. Just because I don't feel as though it really needs a whole lot of work. Erase stuff here. And so you have the basic gist of how this shading is supposed to go down. Naturally, you can go really in depth and like shade underneath the nose, or even actually, this is one thing that this is nice for. Make another layer, clip and group. You don't make the opacity so far down, and you can do highlights pretty easily. Oh, that's because I can't do highlights in the eyes because I did this like an idiot. I wasn't expecting to show off highlights, so that's why I didn't really do it. But yeah, you can do highlights the same way, and I can't do highlights on that one. I'll just kind of piggyback off this layer for a second. Really thrown in. I'm going to avoid highlights for the cell shading one, but you can kind of get the idea of it. And already that face and the headshot kind of comes out a little bit more. So, let me throw this in the time lapse real quick, and I'll jump over to the next one. Be back real soon. Alright. Oh. Alright, everybody, welcome back. Not a whole lot left for me to do, as you can tell, but it looks nice. So, let's move on. I did most of that one while I was talking. To the brush layer. Now, this layer is a lot more labor intensive in how it's actually made. Namely that you're brushing in everything. It's as the name implies. I don't even know if this is the actual name of it. But the way you go about doing it is you activate the preserve opacity on the layer you're working on. Lots of programs have that ability on them. Things like Photoshop have it. I believe GIMP has it as well, and so does Paint Tool Sci. Maybe Fire Alpaca. I've never used that one, but I've heard good things. Anyways, you preserve the opacity, and what it does is it means you can't draw outside of what you've already drawn in. So, say if I take this brush and make it all the way white, I'm on the hair layer, but I can't draw out here. I can only draw in on what's already made. It's preserving the opacity of the drawing itself. So, we take the layer, we take a darker version of it, and we just start going through and making these. Oh, I need to harden that just a little bit. Making these being the brush strokes. Now, this style is a lot easier to get more of a artistic look, higher fidelity look. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the aesthetic you're going for, but you can definitely get gradients out of it instead of before where you're stuck with one solid shade across the entire board. This time I can say make this area really dark, and then up here I can really lighten it up and have it flare out and look all pretty. I'm going to keep that in there just because I don't want to have to delete it now, because I like how it flares up and looks all pretty. And like before, I'm going to start with the hair here. Now notice I'm not actually drawing in the shading on the part of the face underneath the hair. I'm just drawing in the hair because I set the opacity and locked it in to what it was already at. And since there's none of this material on the orange, since I'm just working on this single layer, it doesn't have me paint that in. And this area I'm going to make solid. Second thought. Let's not quite make it solid. Fade that out a little bit. Now you have to understand a little bit more about how to shade with this style in order to have it really work well. Like, I'm really rushing this. As I said, I'm doing a lot of different styles today, so I'm not gonna sit down and spend like 25 minutes on one area as I do before. I make these videos way too long. I don't know why any of you watch them. I make fun of my own content, so you don't have to. But I'm just throwing all these things in. You can spend a lot of time with this style. Now, I'm done with this layer, for the most part. There's obviously a little bit more I could do here and there. But I'm going to jump down to this layer, the orange. Now, the orange is the exact same thing. You make the brush size a little bit smaller because it's fur, not hair. And you brush it all in. don't know what all you were expecting. Nothing different, really. So, as I'm going around the face, I make sure that I'm getting all the undersides of things, not the oversides. Above. I'm not going above anything. I'm just going where naturally the shading should be. The chin would be a little bit darker right underneath the face. And it kind of lessens as it goes out here, because there's less covering it up. Now, this is also going underneath the stripes. The issues with the way I did the coloring here is that for this style of shading, I'll have to go back through and actually manually shade in all of the stripes and have them all try to match what is going on up to them and going on the rest of the face. So the way I colored this, I actually gave myself a little bit more work than I really should have. But, oh well. Just, oh well. No one but me would have seen that otherwise. And you all get the same product. And besides, you don't even know how to color this, so I mean... Anyways, actually, I'm going to show you a little bit of something you can do with this before I jump into the time lapse. Because you have the darks on this, you can actually add in the highlights just as easily. So for the hair is naturally very reflective and shiny. You can do this and make the hair jump out a lot more and make it look really, really pretty. And of course you have this kind of band that goes across the head that seems to be oh so common in different styles and different genres. Widen it out just a little bit. And as long as you follow the contours of where you believe the hair strand should be going, you're going to be set. The only issue with this style is with hard lines like this, it can kind of make those hard lines look a little bit ugly. But for large open areas, it's really, really pretty. Alright, I'm going to kick this into time lapse again. I'll be back with you real soon. Alright, welcome back. Now, a couple things I want to point out that I didn't really say while I was doing the stuff before the time lapse. With this style, you can get really, really in-depth with the eyes, like the color in the eyes. And of course, I added in the little shine on them because I kind of felt like it. I thought it was needed. Also, with this style, you have to follow the contours of the fur, or at least with the main body. Otherwise, it just looks like a huge mess. I kind of messed up here, and I could not think of a single way of fixing that. So, sorry for that one. If I took a little bit more time, I could probably straighten that up. But let's move on. This is a tutorial, not to perfection. Now, onto the airbrush one. Double checking that's the right one. Yes, that is. Okay. Onto the airbrush. So, the airbrush is a really, really nice mix of the previous two, wherein it can be done much faster, and it can be done really well. Just not quite as good as either way. Kind of take your pick. Now with this one, very similar. You make another layer above it, clip and group. You use the airbrush tool. You use the airbrush tool, which should come with just about any program out there. Again, GIMP, Photoshop, and Style have it. Fire Alpaca should have this, and I believe Manga Studios does as well. Lots of... I'm not even going to say lots. I'm going to go out and say every single program has this tool on it. And all it is it's just what looks to be an airbrush. Now, this one is done a little bit differently from the other ones. This one can be done by just throwing in a lot, and I do mean a lot, of really, really light shading across the board. Now, if you're saying, why on earth would I want to do that? That looks kind of really bad. And the answer is, yeah, it does look kind of really bad. No remorse, huh? Yep. The purpose of this is to kind of just throw shading in, and then you go back in and you tidy it up. So, say this whole thing right here is black in front. So I can come back through with the eraser and kind of turn these into the nice little spikes that I need in order to get the effect I'm looking for. Being careful I don't go over something else, because this is one of those styles where you only get like one really good shot at it. Otherwise you can really mess it up and have to start over that whole section. Like right there, I just kind of went over the line. I can't replicate that shade of black, so now I have to redo that whole line. So I should have let go and continued going, so I didn't have to restart it completely. Ugh. Anyways, this style is really, really nice to kind of get some really interesting gradients down really fast. Yet it still gives you the flexibility to go back through and not update, but put in detail as you want. And of course, say if I really don't like how this is turning out up here, I can just take this out again, and I can continuously add darkness into the depths of it. Down here, I can like bring it down a little bit more. I can make that really dark and broody and interesting looking. The only thing that I've not quite been able to fix with this, and it actually kind of really bugs me, is all the little spikes are always brighter. Like the corners are just always brighter, and I can never quite place why. I mean, I can go back through with a really, really small brush, and I can kind of just get right into the corners. But for some reason, it's just the initial thing always makes them look much brighter than everything else. I mean, if anyone knows why that is, please let me know. That actually has been bugging me for quite some time. But as this thing goes, it's just about the same as the other two combined. You just kind of go through and you just add in and subtract away until you get what you want. I don't know where that really came from. That was a very, very strange accent. I don't even know if it's an accent. Anyways, now here's where this can get a little bit tricky. So, notice how I shaded this area right here, yes? Notice how this area right here is dark as well. Yet, I want this whole area up here to be shaded. So, what I have to do is, I have to use a really wide brush and kind of bring it down. But that leaves this area always to be darker. That's where you always have to be careful with this style. And I don't actually have to erase up there because I want this up here to be darker as well. Now this is only useful for really soft shading. It's not that good for really dramatic or really detailed unless you want to take a lot of time to kind of go through and refine it. Like this hair back here, I'm going to have to go through with a eraser and kind of just bring out the highlights of it and make it remind you that it's hair and not some solid blob of blobbiness. Yeah, that's right. That's what hair is. If you don't have highlights in your hair, it just becomes one solid mass. True story. That's how it works. Don't sue me. And that's kind of the gist of it, actually. I think this one could have been done in real time. I'm still going to go through and refine it a little bit more, but for the most part, you're looking at the final product of it. Be back with you soon. And welcome back. So, as you can see, the airbrush tool can kind of give you a lot of really nice shades, and coupled with the eraser and kind of taking back some of the darkness, you can make a really nice shaded photo. And of course I added in the highlights here because I did quite a bit of it when I was just showing you this is a really quick way to get stuff done. You can throw in a bunch more detail the more you work at it. So I just kind of left it as this just so you guys can kind of see how it looked. And on to the last one. Now this one is just called color. Now, wait, what? Huh, weird. It looks like there's way more layers on this than there should be. Anyways, this one's just called color. And the reason being is there's one interesting style that I've been trying to work with a little bit that I just felt the need to show. And it takes advantage of something that people seem to not want to do anymore, and that's shading with color. Not all shadows are black and white. It's as simple as that. And people tend to not want to shade with anything other than black and white. Now, I use black and white this entire time. That's because that's easy to know. But the way you go about this is you take two colors that are opposites. So for this one, I'm using blue and yellow. And you take your airbrush, massive size, and you kind of go across one half the image. Kind of putting it in darker where it needs to be darker. And of course, this is a layer above all of the colors, much like the airbrush layer that was done just before. And kind of go through all this stuff. Then you flip around to the other shade, make a layer directly above it, and do the exact same thing, but for all the highlights or the bright areas of the drawing. And don't be too worried if the colors meet at any point, or if this is going to look kind of sloppy. It's supposed to be kind of sloppily thrown in. And of course on the face, that's going to be considered a highlight for this. Now you don't want so many midtones or middle areas for this one to work well. Now you just kind of go through. I want to actually lower the density. This is going to be very, very softly done. So you don't want a whole lot of shades. You don't want a whole, not shades. I can't think of words properly right now. You don't want a whole lot of really, really hard colors. You just kind of want the, I don't know, you just kind of want it to be soft and pretty. I really can't think of a better way to put it. But if you just have like high density and just constantly doing that, it just will look like cell shading all over again, and that's kind of what we're trying to avoid with this one. And of course, you can use shading or color in any style of shading, just like any of them. Please use color more often. I don't know why color has been leaving people's shades for so long, and I'm doing it too. I'm not going to say I don't, but it's just, y'all are learning. Please learn to use colors. And it's not only a case of light bulbs that are different colors, like I don't know, raves or some parties. It's also a case of just light bouncing off of something next to you. Like if you're standing next to a yellow brick wall, the light coming off it is going to look yellow. So if you're shading the person standing next to a yellow brick wall and you're shading them with black, it just looks a little bit off. Looks like I'm using a pool chalk. I just imagine that would look pretty funny, running up to someone, covering them into pool chalks. Like, that's the dark side of the shading. So I'm going through with a brush, or a basic pencil, but with a lower opacity, just so that it doesn't quite interfere with the airbrush side of things so much. And when you get closer to the end, you go through and you brighten it all up. Or not brighten it. You lower the opacity of it. That is not brightening in the slightest. Then you can kind of go through and finish off a bit of the shading that you feel you might miss, like the insides of the ears. Taking airbrush and kind of mellowing that out again, because that was a little bit too sharp. I like how sharp the hair is back there, so I'm going to kind of bring it out here as well. And it's kind of as simple as that. I mean, there's lots of little intermediate steps you could take with this to make everything look like it's really well blended in. That's the word I was thinking of this whole time. Blending. Blending. Oh, why couldn't I think of the word blending? Anyways, because that is using actual colors and not a black and white, it actually makes it look a bit more lively, to put it simply. Not all lights are going to be white, and not all blacks are going to be black. So, that has been these 4 styles of shading. As you can see, between all of them, they all have their own uses. Like, you could easily see a lot of these put into different contexts and put them into different stories or different cases, because a lot of specific genres will use a certain kind of shading. And the shading will make a drawing look far different between one and another. Like these, you saw all these beforehand. They were the same line art in the same colors. They were done exactly the same. Just the shading is different. And with that, thank you all for watching. If you liked what you learned here today, try it out. Try all 4 of these. Try just one of them. My email is going to be at the end of this video and in the description below. Send them to me. I'd love to see what you make. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Have a great day.